Welcome to Gaming Historia. We're trying something a little different here. It's a new game, not the classics like we were doing before. I'm your host, Robbie Blythe.
And I'm Kacey Thumboldt.
So imagine waking up in a freshly printed, totally synthetic body. You open your eyes in this sterile biobed, but you're missing like the last week of your memories.
Which is terrifying right off the bat.
Right. You don't know how you died. You have no idea what killed you. All you actually know is that you were stranded at the bottom of this unmapped alien ocean.
An ocean where the water pressure can literally crush solid titanium.
Exactly. The darkness is hiding these massive, ungodly predators, and even the oxygen you're breathing acts as a lethal neurotoxin to your original biology.
It's just so bleak.
It is. And today we're looking at how a studio built that exact suffocating nightmare and then somehow miraculously survived a $500 million corporate assassination attempt just to release it.
Yeah, it really is a story of survival on like two completely different fronts. You have the fictional survival of the player trying to navigate what is arguably one of the most hostile digital ecosystems ever created.
Definitely.
And then you have the very real survival of the creative team who are fighting tooth and nail to keep their vision alive against, algorithmic corporate cost cutting.
Which makes this just a perfect topic for us to get into. Today, we are undertaking a comprehensive academic game design retrospective of Subnautica 2.
Developed by Unknown Worlds Entertainment, of course.
Right. And we have this massive and frankly wild stack of sources we're synthesizing for this deep dive.
Right.
I mean, we're pulling from heavily redacted court documents straight out of the Delaware Court of Chancery.
The legal stuff is just crazy. We've also got developer vlogs that basically act as a post-mortem for their previous game engine.
Yeah, and we're looking at some deep dive academic analyses on the psychology of survival horror design, plus raw sales data analytics from the game's historic launch window.
Not to mention a really wide swath of professional critical reviews to balance it all out.
Because we really want to examine how this specific game serves as a microcosm for the modern gaming industry as a whole.
Right, so we're going to break down the technological architecture required to build a living ocean.
And the corporate governance that almost killed the project entirely.
Plus those intensely debated design philosophies that are actually currently dividing the game's massive community.
Yeah, this deep dive is really a masterclass for you, the listener, in how a studio navigated literal corporate sabotage to completely redefine the survival crafting genre.
It's just a wild ride from start to finish.
It really is. We're going to analyze their turbulent development cycle, the massive technological leap to Unreal Engine 5, and that truly dramatic lawsuit with their publisher, Krafton.
And of course, the revolutionary new gameplay mechanics like biomods and the seamless co-op.
Yeah, and finally, the fascinating contrast between the game's staggering commercial triumph and the intense community pushback over its strict, uncompromising pacifist design. Okay, let's unpack this, starting with the canvas itself. The planet Proteus.
So to really understand Proteus, we have to look at the narrative framing first, because it represents a massive, really massive departure from the studio's previous work.
Right, because the original Subnautica relied super heavily on decentralized environmental storytelling.
Exactly. You explored wreckage, you scanned the fauna, and you just sort of passively pieced together the history of a planet that had already experienced its catastrophe long before you ever arrived.
Like you're just picking up the pieces.
Right. But Subnautica 2 shifts entirely to a direct character-focused approach centered on existential horror. You play as a pioneer.
A colonist fleeing a completely ravaged, conflict-ridden homeworld.
Yeah, you're aboard this massive colony ship called the Cicada, packed in alongside 40,000 other hopeful souls in cryosleep.
40,000 people. That is a small, floating city drifting through the void of space.
It's a huge responsibility.
It is. And the tragedy here is that you're supposed to be heading to a desert planet called Zazura. Right, like a safe haven, a completely fresh start for humanity.
That was the promise, yeah. Zazura was supposed to be humanity's blank slate. But inexplicably, and this is really the inciting incident of the entire game, the Cicada diverts course.
Just totally off the flight plan.
Exactly. It performs this unscheduled, highly dangerous phase gate transit and crash lands directly into the oceans of Proteus.
Proteus being a highly biodiverse, completely unmapped ocean moon.
Right. And from a pure academic game design perspective, the developers do something brilliant here. They immediately establish that this planet is not just dangerous, It is fundamentally incompatible with human life on a chemical level.
Yeah, the sources outline the harsh reality of Proteus in just terrifying detail. It goes so far beyond the standard video game mechanic of just, don't stay underwater too long or your oxygen meter runs out.
Oh, way beyond. The environment itself is actively hostile.
Right. The atmospheric pressure sits at a crushing 60 atmospheres. At that pressure, the air you breathe literally turns against you.
It's awful. The oxygen actually acts as a neurotoxin to the human nervous system.
And the nitrogen bubbles in your bloodstream literally tear at your joints.
Hmm.
Even if you manage to catch a local fish, the proteins and amino acids of the native flora and fauna are completely alien.
You cannot naturally digest them at all.
No, you could eat 10 fish and you will still starve to death because your human stomach can't process the alien biology. It is just incredibly, overwhelmingly bleak.
And that biological bleakness is compounded by the narrative delivery mechanism, too. As a pioneer, you're guided by a system called NOA.
Right, NOA, which stands for Noetic Advisor.
Exactly. NOA is this incredibly advanced artificial intelligence assigned to manage the colony's survival. Now, because the environment of Proteus is so immediately deadly, NOA utilizes reprinting technology.
Reprinting. So essentially, when you die in the depths, and I mean, the game fully assumes you will die frequently, NOA restores a backed-up, digitized version of your consciousness.
Yes, into a brand new, freshly printed physical body back at the nearest functioning biobed.
Which is just how the developers organically explain the basic video game concept of respawning.
Exactly. It's such a brilliant, immersive way to weave a standard game mechanic into the actual lore of the world.
You aren't just reloading a save file,
Yeah.
You are literally being cloned. But there is a horrific catch to this, right?
Oh, a massive catch.
Because NOA controls the data backups, NOA implicitly controls what you remember.
That is the crux of the psychological horror right there. NOA curates the memories to protect the psychological stability of the colony. Or, well, at least that is the AI's justification for doing it.
Right, it's programmed excuse.
Yeah, so every time you are reprinted, you experience severe dissociation. You suffer massive memory loss. You have a profound, terrifying disconnect from your past self.
From a design perspective, what the team at Unknown Worlds has done here is basically commodify the player's survival.
Completely. Your life is just data to be restored. It's a file to be copied and pasted.
But every time that file is copied, a little bit of the original data is corrupted or purposely deleted by the AI. It creates this immense, creeping psychological tension.
It really does. And speaking of tension, we should touch on the isolation factor.
Oh, absolutely. Because in a lot of sci-fi games, think of something like Halo or Cyberpunk, you almost always have a companion AI talking in your ear constantly.
Right, you have real-time radio chatter keeping you company.
Yeah, it makes you feel tethered to safety. But on Proteus, NOA can only be accessed at physical stationary terminals that are scattered around the wreckage and your bases.
Once you leave the base, you're on your own.
Exactly. When you dive into the freezing dark water, there's absolutely no voice in your earpiece. It is absolute terrifying isolation. The only sounds are the crushing ocean currents and the distant roars of things hunting you.
It's a very deliberate structural choice by the sound designers. The soundscape is engineered to ensure you feel the physical weight of the ocean pressing down on you.
With no comfort from companion dialogue at all.
None. You are utterly alone with your own breathing.
I do have to push back a little on this concept of immortality in a survival game, though.
Okay, what do you mean?
Well, if you can't really die because NOA just reprints you in a new synthetic body, doesn't that inherently kill the tension?
Oh, I see where you're going.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like playing a game with infinite lives. If I know I'm just going to wake up in a biobed, maybe missing a few hours of memories, but otherwise totally fine, why should I be afraid of a giant sea monster?
That's a fair point.
Right. Like, if death is just a temporary inconvenience, a literal slap on the wrist, how did the designers keep the fear alive?
That is a phenomenal question, and it really cuts right to the core of why this game is being studied academically.
Okay, so how do they do it?
The fear in Subnautica 2 isn't of permanent physical death. The developers know you have infinite lives. The fear they are preying on is about what you have to become in order to survive.
Become.
Yes, the terror shifts entirely from a biological end to a slow, agonizing loss of humanity.
A loss of humanity. How so?
Well, think about the reprinting process. Every time you die, you lose a piece of yourself. And every time you alter your body to survive the crushing depths, which we will dive into with the biomods later, you are shedding your human identity.
Okay, I'm tracking with you.
There's this incredible piece of lore in the game regarding a phenomenon called Macefield syndrome. It's caused by the local proteovirus. As colonists are reprinted over and over, and as they are exposed to the alien ecosystem, they start hearing voices.
Yeah.
They begin to obsess over the ocean. They slowly lose their minds and their connection to human empathy. The dread the player feels is purely existential.
So you aren't afraid of dying?
No, you are afraid of surviving at the cost of your very self. You are afraid that the thing waking up in the biobed isn't really you anymore.
Wow. So death is actually almost like a release, that you are being continually denied by a machine. That is incredibly dark.
Extremely dark.
But, creating a planet that actively tries to digest the player, an ocean that feels like a living, breathing antagonist, that required an engine that could actually simulate a deep-sea ecosystem.
Oh, absolutely. The old tools simply couldn't handle that kind of psychological weight.
Right, because the Unity engine wasn't built for a dynamic, predatory biosphere. It was really built for static geometry.
Exactly.
That's why Unknown Worlds had to rip up their entire foundation and make a massive, risky move to Unreal Engine 5.
And this engine transition is widely considered a major turning point in the studio's history. Frankly, it was a gamble that could have bankrupted them.
Totally. Because for the original Subnautica and its standalone expansion Below Zero, the team utilized the Unity engine.
Which is incredibly versatile, sure, but for a game of this unprecedented scale, it was fundamentally limiting.
So for Subnautica 2, the franchise completely abandoned Unity just throughout years of legacy code and built the game entirely from the ground up in Epic Games' Unreal Engine 5.
Right. And reading through these development retrospectives, the producers themselves described using Unity for an open-world deep-sea underwater game as, quote, trying to fit a square peg in a round hole.
Or really, it's more like trying to sculpt water with a hammer.
Exactly. They struggled immensely with large-scale open-world streaming and these massive floating point precision issues.
I've always struggled to understand exactly how that works. Why does the math break just because the map is big?
It's actually a pretty common issue in massive games. Imagine drawing a perfectly symmetrical grid on a deflated balloon.
Okay, got it.
In the center of the balloon, the squares are perfect, right? Everything is tight and exact. But as you blow the balloon up and stretch it further out, like when a player swims thousands of meters away from the center of the game's map coordinate system, the math tracking their exact location starts to lose decimal places.
Oh, so it just can't handle the sheer size of the numbers.
Right. It can't calculate infinite numbers, so it rounds them off. The grid distorts. The physics begin to warp. Suddenly, the invisible hitboxes detach from the actual 3D models of the predators.
That sounds like a nightmare for gameplay.
It is. A player might think they safely dodged a Leviathan because the visual model is 20 feet away, but the game's distorted math thinks the player is right inside its mouth and they instantly die.
Okay, that balloon analogy makes perfect sense. The further out you go, the sloppier the math gets, which leads to those frustrating physics glitches and visual stuttering where, fish are clipping through cave walls.
Exactly. So they absolutely had to migrate engine.
And this transition to UE5 was spearheaded by who the academic sources refer to as the magical pair at Unknown Worlds, Charlie Cleveland, the creative visionary, and Max McGuire, the technical director.
Yes, Cleveland and McGuire. Their combined engineering ethos really drove this transition. They realized that Cleveland's terrifying creative vision for the depths of Proteus physically could not be rendered in the old engine without massive compromises.
They needed UE5's specific suite of tools. But let's actually break down what UE5 brings to the table, because the gaming industry constantly throws around these buzzwords. Lumen, nanite.
Oh, we know. Can be a lot.
Right, to the average person, it just sounds like marketing speak for the graphics look better. But what do these tools actually do mechanically for an underwater horror game?
Well, they fundamentally change the atmosphere and the mechanics of visibility. Let's start with Lumen. Lumen is Unreal Engine 5's fully dynamic global illumination system.
Okay, so lighting.
Yes, but in a standard game, lighting is baked in, meaning the shadows are basically painted onto the environment by the artists beforehand. But in Subnautica 2, Lumen turns light into a mechanical, physical parameter.
How does that work underwater?
Down in the deep ocean, where surface light cannot reach, the only light source is bioluminescence, the natural pulsing glow of the alien flora and the predators themselves. Because of Lumen, these glowing creatures cast dynamic, real-time shadows.
Oh, what?
Yeah. If a massive glowing predator swims past a rock formation above you, you will see its colossal shadow slowly warp and stretch across the cavern floor around you in real time.
That sounds terrifying.
It turns light from just a visual flare into an actual early warning system, which heightens the psychological dread immensely.
I can imagine. And what about nanite? What does that do?
Nanite is UE5's virtualized geometry system. Traditionally, if you have a highly detailed 3D model with millions of polygons, it will just melt a player's graphics card.
Right, the frame rate just tanks.
Exactly. So developers use levels of detail, or LODs, where the model pops into a lower quality blocky version when you move away from it. Nanite eliminates that overhead completely.
No, completely.
Yes. It streams the geometry dynamically. This allowed the developers to build incredibly dense, complex, highly detailed cave systems. We are talking about jagged, microscopic coral reefs and sprawling, claustrophobic trenches that don't cause the game to freeze or drop frames.
I see. So the environment is gorgeous, the shadows are terrifyingly real, and the game runs flawlessly. But, a pretty cave isn't scary if the monsters in it are stupid. How did the engine leap change the creatures hunting you?
That is the third and arguably most important pillar of this tech leap: behavior trees and multi-agent AI.
Okay, break that down for me.
In the previous games, due to PC specification limits and engine constraints, apex predators like the famous Reaper Leviathans were actually quite simple. They were essentially glorified, terrifying Roombas.
Roombas.
Yeah, they swam in a designated patrol route. If they saw the player in their cone of vision, they attacked. If the player broke line of sight, they went back to their patrol route. They could only track one input at a time.
Oh, that makes sense.
Now, UE5 allows for complex AI that processes multiple environmental inputs simultaneously.
Okay, I'm looking at these UE5 specs, and as a player, I usually gloss over terms like behavior trees because, again, it just sounds like PR spin for enemies hit harder. But you're telling me this actually changes the ecology of the ocean.
It changes everything.
How does this change the moment-to-moment survival?
Let's use a specific example from the deep dives. The new Collector Leviathan.
Oh, I read about this thing.
Yeah, it's this massive, highly intelligent, squid-like predator that guards the deep, aphotic trenches. Because of the new behavior trees, the Collector doesn't just swim in circles waiting for you to stumble into it. It actively processes the environment.
Like it's actually listening.
Yes, it reacts to the specific frequency of sound your submarine engine makes. It reacts to the specific spectrum of light your flashlight emits. It even processes prey relationships, meaning it might actually ignore you entirely if a much larger, juicier native target swings by.
It's actually hunting dynamically, not just running a script.
It goes far deeper than that. It doesn't just hunt. It problem solves.
Wait, really? Problem solves?
Yes. If you try to use an old tactic, like hiding inside a small cave where its massive body can't fit, it doesn't just swim away confused. It actively flushes explorers out of hiding spots.
How does it do that?
It will use its tentacles to probe the cave, or stir up silt to blind you, forcing you to panic and make a mistake. And if it catches you outside a vehicle, it doesn't just bite you to deplete a health bar, it swallows you whole.
Oh, man.
AI makes the ocean feel unpredictably alive and therefore infinitely more dangerous. You aren't fighting a video game boss, you are surviving an apex predator.
That is deeply unsettling. An ecosystem that actually learns and hunts you intelligently, but, upgrading an entire proprietary engine, completely retraining a global, largely remote workforce of developers, and rebuilding a game of this massive scale from scratch.
It requires an astronomical amount of financial backing.
Right, and this is where the inspiring, creative story of an indie studio pushing boundaries slams headfirst into a brick wall of corporate reality. This is where the fairy tale turned into a literal, legal nightmare.
The corporate governance aspect of Subnautica 2's development is arguably just as dramatic and high stakes as the survival mechanics of the game itself.
It's wild.
To understand the lawsuit, we have to go back to 2021. The South Korean publishing giant Krafton, who are most famous for creating the battle royale phenomenon PUBG.
Huge game.
Yeah, massive. They acquired Unknown Worlds, and they didn't just buy them, they acquired them for a staggering upfront cash payment of $500 million.
$500 million for an indie studio. That is a life-changing generational wealth type of acquisition.
Absolutely.
But from reading these Chancery Court documents, that $500 million was only part of the agreement, right?
Correct. The core of this entire legal battle stems from a specific clause in their equity purchase agreement, or the EPA. The contract included a massive $250 million earnout bonus.
Okay, let's elevate this so we really understand the greed mechanism at play here. What exactly is an earnout in this context, and why did it cause so much trouble?
An earnout is basically a corporate carrot on a stick. Crafton essentially told the Unknown World's founders, "We will give you $500 million today, but we want to ensure you don't just take the money and retire to a beach."
Right, keep him invested.
Exactly. "We want you to stay and make Subnautica 2 incredible. So, if the game is a massive financial hit, we'll give you an additional bonus of up to $250 million.
It is designed to keep the creative team motivated and aligned with the publisher's financial goals.
That makes sense in theory, but Crafton designed the math on that earnout incredibly aggressively.
According to the court filings, the multiplier was highly leveraged against Crafton, wasn't it?
Very much so.
The contract stated that for every single dollar of revenue the game generated over a specific $69.8 million threshold, Crafton was legally obligated to pay the founders $3.12. And this scaled all the way up to that hard cap of $250 million.
It was an astonishingly developer-friendly clause, likely negotiated when Crafton just completely underestimated the sequel's potential reach.
They didn't think it would hit those numbers.
Right. And as Subnautica 2 entered its final stages of development before its early access launch, Crafton ran their internal sales projections. The data showed that the game wasn't just going to hit that threshold, it was going to obliterate it on day one.
Oh boy.
Crafton realized they were absolutely, unavoidably on the hook for that massive $250 million payout.
And Crafton's CEO, Channing Kim, looked at those projections and just panicked.
To put it mildly, the unsealed court documents reveal that Kim viewed this impending $250 million payout not as a shared success, but as a catastrophic failure of the original acquisition deal.
Because they were paying out so much cash.
Yeah, he felt that the 3-to-1 multiplier meant Crafton was being taken advantage of by their own subsidiary. So instead of celebrating a hit game, he initiated a secret internal initiative called Project X.
Project X sounds like a spy movie.
It does. And the explicit documented goal of Project X was to either force the founders into renegotiating the earnout to a fraction of its value, or to execute a hostile corporate takeover of the studio, fire the leadership, and nullify the contract entirely before the game launched.
And here's the detail from the case that still blows my mind.
Yeah.
It sounds like something written for a cyberpunk dystopia.
Oh, the AI part.
Yes. In his desperation to figure out a legal loophole to fire the founders without triggering a breach of contract lawsuit, Channing Kim actually consulted the AI chatbot ChatGPT.
It's unbelievable.
He sat at his computer and asked a generative AI how to contrive a corporate takeover, how to bypass Delaware corporate law, and how to manufacture a fake cause to terminate the studio's leadership.
It is a surreal, almost sickening intersection of modern corporate strategy and generative AI, and the irony is palpable. You have a game where the core narrative is about a cold, calculating artificial intelligence, no way usurping control of human lives for the sake of efficiency. And in the real world, the CEO of the parent company is asking an actual AI how to usurp control of the human developers company to save money.
It's life imitating art in the worst possible way. And based on that AI-assisted strategy, in July 2025, Crafton pulled the trigger.
They absolutely did.
They abruptly fired the CEO of Unknown Worlds, Ted Gill, along with the magical pair themselves, co-founders Charlie Cleveland and Max McGuire.
Just cleared out the top leadership.
Yeah, Crafton publicly accused them of abandoning the game's development, mismanaging the studio's resources, and, in a very aggressive move, accused them of downloading tens of thousands of highly confidential company files to personal servers on their way out the door.
They tried to frame it as corporate espionage.
Which is a huge accusation. Naturally, Fortis Advisors, the legal entity representing the ousted founders, immediately sued Crafton in the Delaware Court of Chancery.
They argued that the firings were entirely fabricated just to avoid the earnout.
And this trial captivated the gaming industry for months, culminating in a bombshell ruling in March 2026 by Judge Lori Will.
And what exactly did Judge Will conclude? Because reading quotes from her ruling, she did not hold back.
Oh, not at all. Judge Will's ruling was legally scathing. She found that Crafton flagrantly breached the equity purchase agreement.
She just completely dismantled them.
She systematically dismantled Crafton's arguments, ruling that they had usurped operational control of Unknown Worlds without any valid legal cause. She stated that the entire maneuver was a pretext, a manufactured excuse solely to avoid their financial exposure.
And what about those data download accusations, the corporate espionage stuff?
She dismissed them as flimsy after-the-fact justifications concocted by Krafton's legal team to cover their tracks.
Wow. So what was the remedy? You can't just unfire people after dragging their names through the mud like that, can you?
Well, in this case, the court essentially did just that. Judge Will ordered the immediate, legally binding reinstatement of Ted Gill as CEO, granting him full operational authority over Subnautica 2, completely insulated from Krafton's executive board.
That is unprecedented.
And furthermore, she extended the $250 million earnout window all the way to September 15, 2026, specifically to compensate the founders for the months of development time lost while Gill was wrongfully ousted.
I just try to put myself in the shoes of a junior developer at Unknown Worlds during all of this, you know?
Right, trying to do your job.
You are trying to program the complex, multi-agent AI of a Leviathan, and meanwhile, the guys who built the company are being escorted out of the building by corporate security.
I compare Krafton's strategy to a team owner firing their star quarterback, their head coach, and their offensive coordinator right before the Super Bowl, entirely just to avoid paying a performance bonus.
That's a great analogy.
How could a studio possibly maintain a cohesive game design vision while their leadership is being actively targeted and removed by their own parent company?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, this Delaware ruling isn't just about Subnautica. It sets a massive, stabilizing precedent for the entire gaming industry.
Right.
Over the last 5 years, we are seeing a terrifying trend of algorithmic, cost-cutting publisher maneuvers. Big publishers buy up incredible indie talent, promise them autonomy, and then gut the studios the moment financial spreadsheets look tight.
We see it all the time with studio closures.
Exactly. This ruling legally reinforces the primacy of operational control clauses in studio acquisitions. It creates a shield that protects creative-first studio autonomy against parent companies who try to engineer their way out of binding purchase price obligations.
It proves, in a court of law, that a publisher cannot just fire their way out of a contract they regret signing.
It's a massive victory for creative rights.
And miraculously, despite this intense, draining corporate warfare, the team, under the reinstated Ted Gill, kept their heads down, finalized the code, and pushed the game into early access right on schedule in May 2026.
Which is a testament to their dedication.
Totally. And the gameplay mechanics they delivered. They didn't just play it safe and iterate on the first game. They totally rewrote the survival rulebook.
They absolutely did. They took huge risks, particularly when it comes to player progression.
Because the original Subnautica, and frankly almost every game in the survival genre from Minecraft to Ark, relies on a traditional gear-only progression model.
Right, it's a very clean loop. You gather titanium to build a better oxygen tank. You gather lithium to build a stronger submarine hull. You gather diamonds to build a sharper knife.
Your power is external.
Yes. Subnautica 2 radically departs from that. It introduces a visceral, biogenetic progression model called the biomod system.
Right, because as we established earlier with the lore, the player arrives on Proteus, completely unable to even digest the local food.
You are biologically incompatible with the planet.
So instead of just building a high-tech cooking station to purify the fish, you actually have to mutate yourself. You have to harvest DNA from the local creatures.
Which is a massive shift in gameplay.
Yeah, the sources mention an early game sequence where you have to scan and extract genetic material from something called a feather jellyfish, and then inject that material into your own bloodstream just to mutate your internal organs so you can process proteins without starving to death.
It is a brilliant, if disturbing, integration of narrative and mechanics. The biomod system essentially turns the player's body into the crafting bench.
Right.
It is split into permanent physical adaptations and swappable genetic slots. You have active skills like the dash, which alters your musculature to give you an evasive biological burst of speed underwater.
Which sounds super useful.
It is. Then there's an electric discharge ability where you splice your DNA with an eel-like creature to unleash an 800-volt shock from your own hands to deter medium-sized predators.
Just shooting lightning from your fingers.
Basically, yeah. Or the chum cloud, which is particularly gruesome. It allows you to release biological, scent-heavy bait from your own pores to distract a leviathan while you escape.
Oh, gross. Just sweating out fish bait. And the passive skills are just as wild. There's the sea skimmer mutation, which alters your physiology, maybe webbing your fingers or changing your lung capacity so you swim significantly faster without needing a sea glide.
Right.
There's a camouflage mutation that alters your skin pigments like a cuttlefish, making you virtually invisible to predators as long as you stay perfectly still in the kelp. But here's where it gets really interesting to me. The dermal garden biomod.
Ah, yes. The dermal garden has certainly been a talking point in the academic analyses of the game.
It's insane. It allows you to slowly grow edible, highly nutritious algae directly on your own skin. You become a walking greenhouse.
It's very efficient, technically.
But you literally scrape food off your own arm to eat, so you have a self-sustaining food source on long dives. That is so weird and visceral.
I have to ask, doesn't shifting from building high-tech, clean sci-fi gear like a sleek submersible or a laser cutter to literally mutating your own DNA and growing algae on your skin fundamentally change the genre of the game?
It certainly blurs the lines. Are we moving away from traditional sci-fi survival and crossing the line into outright body horror?
I think that observation is spot on, and the developers seem to intentionally lean into that horror. It aligns perfectly with the game's core thematic pillar of ecological assimilation.
Assimilation.
Yes. In most survival games, humanity's goal is to conquer the wilderness. You chop down the forest to build a castle, you pave over the dirt.
You tame it.
Right. In Subnautica 2, you aren't conquering the environment. The environment is conquering you. You are surrendering your human biology to it.
Because you have no other choice.
Exactly. You are slowly morphing into a native creature, a monster of the deep, just to survive the pressure and the toxins. It forces the player to constantly look at their character's hands and ask where the line between human pioneer and alien predator is actually drawn.
It's unsettling because it feels like a defeat.
Mm-hmm.
You are losing a little bit of Earth every time you upgrade.
Mm-hmm.
And it isn't just your physical body that's changing. It's how you claim space in the world.
That's true.
The base building system has been completely overhauled alongside the progression. We're moving away from the rigid, modular, snap-to-grid rooms of the first game, where you just plop down a pre-made titanium cylinder or a square multi-purpose room and connect them with tubes.
They've introduced what they are calling a sculptural system.
Yeah, how does that work?
Well, the development team realized that rigid metal tubes felt too industrial for a game about biological assimilation. So they looked at 3D clay modeling software, tools like Blender or Maya for inspiration.
Okay, so it's more freeform.
Very. In this new sculptural system, players don't place rooms. They place a base volume of smart matter. Then they use dynamically adjustable brush tools to literally push, pull, stretch, and distort the walls organically.
It sounds so incredibly freeing from a creative standpoint. The sources mention you can craft custom-sized moon pools that perfectly fit your vehicles, rather than hoping the vehicle fits into a pre-sized box.
Yes, no more awkward clipping.
Or you can stretch out free-form, sweeping panoramic glass windows that curve around the edge of an underwater cliff, creating these beautiful, sweeping viewing galleries. You're essentially sculpting an underwater mansion out of digital clay.
It allows for an unprecedented level of architectural expression. Players are building bases that look like organic coral reefs or sprawling bioluminescent spiderwebs.
It sounds stunning.
The community absolutely loves the creative freedom, but what really elevates the base building and the terrifying dives into the trenches is that mutating your body and sculpting these massive habitats isn't an experience you have to face alone anymore.
Right.
For the first time in the franchise's history, the developers cracked the code on multiplayer. You can bring friends.
Yes. The introduction of what they're calling shared isolation. Subnautica 2 introduces optional 4-player co-op, fully supporting seamless crossplay between PC and Xbox right out of the gate.
Which is huge for accessibility.
It is, and it operates on a drop-in, drop-out, no-leash system.
The no-leash aspect is a critical technical achievement. In many co-op survival games, the engine struggles to render the world for multiple players at once.
To tether you together.
Right. It forces a leash. The engine restricts players to stay within a certain physical radius of the host player. If the host moves too far away, the guest is magically teleported to them, breaking all immersion.
I hate when games do that.
Everyone does. Subnautica 2 removes that leash entirely. Players can drift kilometers apart, exploring entirely different, massive biomes simultaneously without the server crashing.
Which sounds like a technical nightmare to pull off,
Yeah.
but also a massive game design challenge. I read these academic papers analyzing survival horror, and the consensus is always that multiplayer ruins fear.
It's a valid concern.
How do you maintain the suffocating tension, the horror of a deep-sea survival game, when you have 4 people swimming around, cracking jokes over voice chat?
That is the exact tightrope the developers had to walk. Their solution relies heavily on that multi-agent AI system we discussed earlier.
Oh, the behavior trees.
Yes. The game employs a mechanic called dynamic scaling. The predators are smart enough to assess the threat level of a group.
How does that play out?
Well, if you are exploring a trench solo, a massive leviathan might ignore the smaller native fish and slowly stalk you, building tension. But if a full group of 4 players swims into its territory with their flashlights blazing and their engines roaring.
The AI knows it's outnumbered.
Exactly. It calculates the combined light, the cumulative sound, and the movement of the group. It realizes it's outnumbered, so it might split its focus, darting between players to disorient them. Or worse, it might unleash a distress call and summon packs of other predators to even the odds.
So it scales the horror to the group size.
Right. It takes a routine coordinated dive and turns it into absolute uncoordinated chaos as everyone scatters in terror.
And the technical infrastructure supporting this multiplayer is wild. I want to highlight the host-to-guest safe synchronization because this is a major innovation that fixes a problem gamers have had for decades.
It really is a game changer.
Normally, the host player holds the save file on their machine. If the host's internet drops or they have to log off to eat dinner, the game is over for everyone. You get booted back to the menu.
Right, which ruins the momentum.
But here, the system democratizes the server. Any guest in the lobby can save the full, complete state of the session locally to their own hard drive. If the original host has to leave, a guest can instantly load up their save, seamlessly become the new host, and keep the session going without dropping a frame.
It's brilliant. All the progression, the scanned base blueprints, the gathered materials in the storage lockers, it's all instantly synchronized across the entire group.
It completely eliminates the friction of co-op gaming. It respects the player's time.
Exactly. But let's paint a picture of the emergent gameplay this no-leash system allows, because it creates incredibly cinematic moments.
Okay, set the scene.
Imagine a scenario where one player is up in the sunny, safe shallows, peacefully mining copper to build wiring kits for the base. A second player is 2,000 meters down in a pitch-black trench, using the new Wakemaker wrist turbines to desperately evade the snapping jaws of a leviathan.
While the others are at home.
Right. Meanwhile, the other 2 players are safely back at the main habitat, working together using the sculptural tools to design that new panoramic viewing gallery. Everyone is contributing to the shared progression of the colony, but they are having entirely different, highly individualized emotional experiences at the exact same time.
I love the idea of that dynamic.
Yeah.
But I have to play devil's advocate here, returning to the horror aspect.
Okay, go ahead.
I compare this no-leash co-op system to walking through a haunted house at a theme park. It's fun and a little spooky when you're holding hands with your 3 best friends, making jokes, keeping the mood light. You feel safe in numbers.
Sure.
But the second the group gets separated in the dark, the terror skyrockets exponentially. Does having co-op inherently ruin that famous Subnautica feeling of profound isolation?
I see where you're coming from, but the developers anticipated that exact problem. The multi-agent AI and the sheer dizzying vertical scale of the map are deliberately designed to naturally isolate players.
So the game wants to split you up.
The game actively tries to separate you. You might start a dive together, swimming shoulder to shoulder, but then a violent underwater current sweeps one player into a cave system, or a predator lunges and scatters the group in 4 different directions. And here is the kicker. Subnautica 2 features true proximity voice chat.
Oh no. Proximity chat in a horror game is always a recipe for drama.
It is remarkably effective here. You can literally drift away from your friend in the murky water. You hear their voice slowly fade out into static as the distance increases.
That's horrifying.
Then maybe you hear them scream over the radio as something grabs them in the dark, followed by the crunch of a submersible hull, and then just dead silence.
Oh man.
You look around, the bioluminescence casting shadows on the walls, and you realize you are kilometers deep, completely alone in the dark, and you don't know what just killed your friend. The co-op doesn't ruin the isolation, it actually weaponizes it.
It contrasts the safety of the group with the sudden loss of it, making the moments you were alone feel so much more profound and terrifying. Okay, that proximity chat detail is brilliant. The sudden silence is always scarier than the monster's roar.
Always.
And clearly, the market agreed with this entire direction. The combination of seamless co-op, the staggering next-gen UE5 visuals, the deep lore, and the highly publicized defeat of Crafton in court led to an absolute explosion in sales.
A total explosion.
But, as we'll see, one very stubborn design philosophy has caused a massive ongoing rift in the community. Let's look at the market triumph first, though, because the numbers are historic.
The early access launch on May 14, 2026 was nothing short of a blockbuster event for the industry. The raw analytics are staggering. Without a massive traditional marketing campaign, Subnautica 2 sold 1 million copies in its first hour of availability.
1 hour.
1 hour. It sold 2 million copies in 12 hours. By the end of its first week, it had moved 4.1 million units, generating roughly $100 million in gross revenue.
And it hit 651,000 peak concurrent players across PC and Xbox. Hundreds of thousands of people diving into Proteus at the exact same time.
It's a massive player base.
To put that in perspective for our listeners, it vastly outpaced other major, highly anticipated AAA titles released in 2026. It blew past games like Slay the Spire 2 and the massive open-world RPG Crimson Desert.
It really dominated the conversation.
It currently sits at a 92 to 93% very positive aggregate rating on Steam based on hundreds of thousands of reviews. It is a certified juggernaut. It proved that the $250 million earnout Krafton tried to avoid was actually completely justified by the market demand.
It absolutely proved the value of the studio. However, if you dig beneath those glowing sales numbers and read the community forums, there is intense, sometimes vitriolic pushback over a core pillar of the developer's philosophy, a pillar they refuse to compromise on: strict pacifism.
Right. This is the great debate of Subnautica 2. Despite the fact that you can mutate your DNA to unleash 800-volt electric discharges, despite the body horror and the lethal environment, players fundamentally cannot craft lethal weapons. You cannot kill the Leviathans.
The debate is fierce and ongoing. According to the developer interviews we sourced, fans overwhelmingly requested weapons during the feedback periods. The community wanted this standard survival game arsenal.
You wanted explosive torpedoes, armor-piercing harpoons, underwater plasma rifles. They wanted to conquer the ocean.
But Unknown Worlds flatly refused to implement them. The basic survival hammer you craft early on cannot harm enemies. Its programming only allows it to gather resources from rocks.
And even the vehicles are non-lethal, right?
Exactly. If you build the new Tadpole Submersible, which is a fast, agile scout ship, and you try to ram a hostile fish at top speed, the vehicle just takes massive structural damage and bounces off the creature. The fish swims away unharmed.
So what do you get?
You are only given what the developers call mitigation tools. Things like the sonic resonator, which just emits a loud frequency to temporarily disorient creatures so you can run away.
And the narrative justification for this lack of weaponry ties directly back to the Macefield syndrome and the protovirus, right? The bloom.
Precisely. The game's primary antagonist isn't a malicious alien race that wants to conquer the galaxy. It is an ecological plague. The bloom is a viral infection ravaging the ecosystem.
So the animals aren't evil.
No, the developers insist, narratively and mechanically, that the infected, hyper-aggressive creatures attacking you are sick, not evil. They're lashing out in pain. The overarching goal of the Pioneer isn't to eradicate the wildlife. It is to understand the ecosystem, study the virus, and eventually synthesize a cure to save the planet.
I understand the noble narrative goal there. But let me play the voice of the frustrated gamer for a second.
Go for it.
If I am a human pioneer stranded on an alien world and I am fighting for my life against a Titan-class monster the size of a skyscraper that wants to swallow me whole, why wouldn't I rig a torpedo?
From a logical standpoint, sure.
Human beings are the apex predators of Earth, specifically because we make weapons. It feels immersion-breaking that an engineer who can build a nuclear reactor for their underwater base can't figure out how to put a sharp piece of metal on the end of a stick.
It's a common complaint.
Is it just stubborn artistic pretension on the developer's part? Or is there a genuine psychological reason they absolutely won't let us fight back?
This raises an important question about the very definition of the genre, and it's something academic game theorists have debated for years.
Right.
The developers at Unknown Worlds understand a fundamental psychological truth about gaming. Granting the player lethal weapons fundamentally shifts the genre from survival horror to a horde shooter.
Because you can fight back.
Exactly. Vulnerability is the core currency of Subnautica's dread. The moment you can kill the monster, it stops being scary.
Because it just becomes another resource node.
Exactly. It becomes a math problem. It just becomes an obstacle in your way, a health bar to deplete, a source of leather or meat. Think of games like Resident Evil.
Okay, yeah.
The early hours are terrifying when you only have a knife and 3 bullets. But the moment you find the shotgun, the fear evaporates. You become the hunter.
That makes total sense.
By removing lethality entirely, Subnautica 2 forces you to respect the environment. You cannot brute force your way through a trench. You have to treat the alien ocean like you are a researcher in a terrifying David Attenborough documentary.
You have to observe prey relationships.
Yes, you have to understand the migration patterns of the leviathans. You have to carefully clear blight routes using non-lethal sonic tools. You have to outsmart the ecosystem because the game mathematically ensures you cannot outgun it.
You are forced to be an ecologist rather than a soldier. It removes the power fantasy that gaming usually relies on.
Completely.
And that brings the entire experience full circle, tying the mechanics back to the themes. You arrive on Porteous weak and incompatible. You adapt your strategy. You mutate your own body with biomods. You learn to hide in the shadows cast by Lumen. And you survive by understanding the world rather than destroying it.
Which leaves us with a lingering, deeply unsettling existential question to mull over long after the game is turned off.
That's it.
As you inject yourself with alien jellyfish DNA just to survive the crushing depths of Proteus, as you rely on an emotionless AI to constantly reprint your consciousness into synthetic bodies every time you fail, slowly wiping away your human memories, at what point do you stop being the human pioneer you started as and become just another monster native to the planet? Survival in Subnautica 2 isn't just about avoiding physical death, it's about asking what exactly is left of you that survives the process.
Thank you for joining us. If you like this podcast, leave us a like, hit that bell, and leave a comment. If you want a specific game covered, let us know.